All right, so we're continuing on with the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And what page was it? 494, someone said?
Yes.
494, about halfway down the page. And we're looking at a section, Faith in God's Name. And Ramakrishna was talking about, the three types of devotion, the Rajas devotion, the Tamasic devotion, and the Sattvic devotion, and how all three of them are fine. I really enjoyed, is just a quick renewal here. The Sattvic Bhakti, he makes no outward display, so you're not concerned about showing off your faith at all. A man with such devotion loves privacy. Perhaps he meditates inside the mosquito net and nobody sees him, right? When this kind of devotion is awakened, one hasn't long to wait for the vision of God. So for the Sattvic version of devotion, that's the closest to seeing God, closest to the realization. When it's just a personal interior matter, just your loving nature. And then a man of Rajasic Bhakti feels like making a display of his devotion. He worships the deity with 16 ingredients, enters the temple wearing a silk cloth, and puts around his neck a string of Rudraksha beads interspersed here and there with beads of gold and ruby. So that's your Rajasic, your active or highly vibrational person worshiping God. And then the Tamasic Bhakti, which I sort of like it just because it's a little sassy. A man with Tamasic Bhakti shows the courage and boisterousness of a highway robber. A highway robber goes on his expedition openly shouting, "Kill, plunder." He isn't afraid even of 8 police officers. The devotee with Tamasic Bhakti also shouts like a madman, "Hara Hara, Vyam Vyam, victory to Kali." He has great strength of mind and a burning faith, right? And often threatens God. "You're the one that put me here. It's up to you to save me and to get me home. Fix it. I'm tired of living like this." So a nice mix of those, actually. Probably none of us has any one of them consistently. And that brings us here to this little section that someone has titled "Faith in God's Name." That's not part of the original, but in this PDF, someone went through and put little headings on sections. And it starts off today, Thakur Sri Ramakrishna is speaking, and he says, a man should have such a fiery faith as to be able to say, "I have uttered the name of God. How can I be a sinner?" Imagine a man repeating the name of Hari day and night, and at the same time saying that he is a sinner, right? And so again, in Vedanta, it's really frowned upon to identify with really any attributes besides Satchitananda. You can only say 3 true things about yourself. I am loving, right, by nature. I am wise by nature. And I exist. I am. Those are the only 3 things that you can say about yourself that are true. If you add any other attributes, they tend to belong either to body or mind, right? Those attributes like I'm angry. No, you're not angry. You shouldn't say that. You should say that the mind is angry. Oh, I'm tired. No, you're not tired. The body may be tired. So say it that way. And it sounds persnickety, but I think it's very important to use the right vocabulary to help you break that attachment, because you are not this body and its attributes do not belong to you. And it's the fact that you don't know that and that you don't believe that causes you to be enslaved, because the body, decides it's hungry, and guess who has to run to the kitchen and quickly cook something up that the body likes to eat, right? It's going to be you. And as long as you're deluded into thinking that I want to eat, so I'm cooking for myself to eat, then you don't recognize the bondage, right? And you kind of happily play along, and it changes your definition of freedom, which is part of the trick of Maya. It changes the idea of freedom to being do whatever you want to do. That's what freedom is to the bound soul. To someone who's entangled with body mind, they tend to think that freedom is being able to do whatever I want. And so that's freedom. But we come to find from the realized souls that want is a horrible bondage, and better to have no desire, so that you're free in the moment. You need nothing. You're not discontent at all. You're full of bliss in the divine self, and you're an observer of body-mind. And you see that body-mind knows well how to take care of itself, and the thought that you had to be present for it and make it happen was the delusion. And so he's saying here that you should have such a faith in the love of God, in the grace of the beloved, and such a faith that if you mention his name even once, you would no longer be able to call yourself a sinner, because I've been blessed, I've been touched by grace. To even utter the name of God requires that grace. And there's another aspect of this too, another way of growing in faith, or at least nurturing our faith, and that is nurturing your sincerity and your earnestness. Right? A lot of times we identify with being sinners as such because we're not making efforts to our best degree, and we're aware of that. And so because we're depending on our own works, we feel shy about saying, that I'm a devotee of God. How can I be a sinner? Right? Because we know that we're not doing our best inside. And so two things need to happen there. One, do your best, for sure. Don't lie to yourself. And the second thing is put your trust in the love of God for you and not in your performance. So meditate on the love of God, because it is because of God's love that any of this is possible. It's because God has shared himself with you, meaning that his existence has become your existence, right? That he being intelligent, you have become intelligence. And his being loving, being love itself, you have become loving. And so this is where we want to identify ourselves. We identify ourselves solely and purely with our attributes that belong to the image of the beloved that animates us, that is our very central self, that Sat-Chit Ananda. So have that fiery faith. Don't identify yourself by your faults. If, just like Brother Lawrence, if you're going along and you find that you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, don't give yourself a hard time about it. Recognize it, admit it out loud, and stop doing it. And vice versa, if you're not doing something that you should be doing, again, don't trouble yourself about it. Don't identify with it and kick yourself around the block. Apologize, recognize, and move on. Just start doing what you should be doing. And that was Brother Lawrence's almost entire philosophy that took him into realization. Just that alone. If ever, the root of it was never forgetting the presence of God, always recognizing that he is always in the presence of God. And then that turned into a very pure bliss. But he maintained that constant awareness by always making sure that he was never doing anything that was displeasing to God, or never not doing something that he could do to please God. And just that simple paragraph of instruction was all that was necessary for his realization, for his ecstatic experience of the beloved, that union.
Swami, can you please repeat those two things?
Yes, that one is to be constantly aware of the presence of God. And the second is, in that awareness, to never, if you weren't doing something that you should be doing, he simply started to do it and didn't give himself much trouble about it. And if he was doing something that he shouldn't be doing, or something that wasn't pleasing to the divine, he would also not give himself much trouble about it, but he would simply stop doing it. So those two directives: if you're not doing something that would please God, do it. If you're doing something that displeases God, stop it. That's it. That's all there is. And that's very simple and very straightforward if we were very simple and straightforward, right? If we were guileless. And that's why Thakur Ramakrishna is always praising guileless people who are not very calculated, or they're not complex in their mind. They're very straightforward and very simple, very trusting people, very open people. And so Ramakrishna is always encouraging that, because that's what it takes to see God within, to recognize the presence within. When the ego gets too knotted, we get too entangled, and we can't see very clearly. So imagine a man repeating the name of Hari day and night, and at the same time saying that he is a sinner. Yes, if you're repeating it day and night, well, you're certainly not even then going to be a sinner, right? Because if you're actually repeating the name constantly, your mind's on God, and it's being lifted above all those desires of body mind that often get it to dip into the mud, the things that cause us a lot of trouble, a lot of suffering. So saying, Sri Ramakrishna became overwhelmed with a divine ecstasy and sang, "If only I can pass away repeating Durga's name, how can you then, O Blessed One, withhold from me deliverance, wretched though I may be? I may have stolen a drink of wine, or killed a child unborn, or slain a woman or a cow, or even caused a Brahmin's death. But though it all be true, nothing of this can make me feel the least uneasiness, for through the power of your sweet name, my wretched soul may still aspire even to Brahmanhood." This is one of those songs that he sings quite a bit. This is that faith in God's love, in the name of God, in the presence of God, knowing that God sees you as a treasure, right? That you are worth everything to the beloved. And that, he says, if anybody reaches for me in any way, in that way, I will reach them, right? I will bring them home. Yes.
No, I've read this before in somewhere, and the same little phrase struck me, killed a child unborn. That seems very contemporary.
Yes.
And what is Ramakrishna talking? What? Any idea that why that's there?
Well, it's abortion, it's what he's talking about. And, that gets into a political area, but without going political on it, I don't think there's anybody that approves of killing a child, whether it's born or unborn. And that's not what the argument politically is about. It's about whether it's a person's choice, a woman's choice to have control of her own body, to make those decisions within a context that are really very personal to her. And so he's not in any way challenging that, but he is within any frame of morality. Killing someone else isn't the desired thing. It may be a necessary thing in some circumstances, and it may be a justifiable thing in some circumstances. But nonetheless, it's not a great,
Right.
it's not a great thing.
Like, I guess I hadn't thought that abortions were popular or going on and this time in history, that it would make it into the.
Oh, sure. Oh, no. Abortions have gone on since the beginning of time. Oh, yeah. No, that's always been a part, always been one of the things, and, the enjoyment of the act is lots of fun. The raising and keeping a child together for 18 years afterwards isn't a lot of fun. So there's always been people that like the fun part and want to get rid of the unfun part. So that's part of the human experience. So yes, but he's saying there, he's really just saying there's nothing that you can do, right? That God would withhold deliverance if you're chanting the power of the name, chanting the name of God. And really it's because it would be self-correcting. Satchitananda, and being aware of Satchitananda as your nature, begins to cancel out the problems in your nature that come from the delusion of thinking I'm body mind. All desires arise from body mind. And so if you're chanting the name, you're basically chanting, you're reverberating with Satchitananda inside, and that's coming forward and beginning to express itself. And yes, you may have started out in any of these conditions. You may have been engrossed in all of those, unhappy activities that he lists there in the song. But his whole point is that once you've started chanting the name of God, and once you've started moving forward in your practice, nothing will withhold you from your deliverance. Nobody has ever done anything that God could not help them transcend, that God could not lift them out of it. And so he's emphasizing that kind of faith. It's like, because all of us tend to identify with our weaknesses. We tend to describe ourselves by our faults. And that's a very unhealthy thing to do here. And so he's saying you need to replace that with a faith in God's love for you, with a faith in God's grace toward you. And through that, you can lay down that karma, because as long as you're holding on to guilt and shame and the definitions of your faults, that is going to keep you in delusion. That's going to keep you bound to the results of those actions, and you'll suffer. And it'll be harder to overcome them, because if you think you're a sinner, it's hard not to be one if you've already defined yourself as one. And so we don't want to define ourselves. We don't want to write any stories about ourselves except for stories of freedom and transcendence. That's why Ramakriya or Vivekananda in many of his lectures ends by saying, say always, I am ever free and ever pure. I am loved of God. I have never been born. I have never died. So repeat those things and identify deeply with that, because that will take you to the silence. That will take you to the peace that passes understanding deep within. See, when he says here, he ends that verse, he says, even if all of that is true, I've killed these unborn kids, I've killed a woman, I've murdered other people, I've murdered a Brahmin, went out and found a Swami to knock out and rob. Even if I've done all that, he says, but though all of it be true, nothing of this can make me feel the least uneasiness. For through the power of your sweet name, my wretched soul may still aspire, even to Brahmanhood, right? Even to becoming a monk, even to being a divine teacher. It's like this is the truth of God's love and God's redeeming power, God's redemptive power. He sang another song, behold, my mother playing with Shiva, lost in an ecstasy of joy. Drunk with a draught of celestial wine, she reels, and yet she does not fall. Erect she stands on Shiva's bosom, and the earth trembles under her tread. She and her lord are mad with frenzy, casting aside all fear and shame. Right? And this is just that play of life, the Shakti Shiva interaction there. That the Divine Mother was doing such a great job of wiping out all the demons and killing them all. They were afraid that she wasn't going to stop. And so Shiva lays down in front of her, and she accidentally then steps on him, touches his chest with her foot. And that is what causes her to freeze in place. It's all a cultural story there around those elements. But the idea is that Shiva and Shakti dance. They stay in balance when together, and this is really where we live our life, is in the middle of the dance of Shiva and Shakti, right? Shakti is mind, active mind that's been infected with me and mine. So the mind is the world of constant, unrepeating change, and we live there as a thought of ourself. We talk about that, and that's what normal life is. And so we're living in the world of Shakti at that point. We're controlled utterly by the Divine Mother. We are, she's got hooks in all of our senses and pulls us wherever the divine will wants to, and we go running, following ignorantly, not knowing the difference, right? And then the other side of us is that shrine of the heart, that Shiva, that unchanging absolute, the divine presence, which is always steady, always present. All the joy that we feel in our life, when it comes from chanting the name of God, it becomes more permanent, because that's what we are. But we access it usually through our senses. So we get some pleasure from the world. Well, that pleasure is your innate bliss, right? Coming out in a wave that then is going to have a lull behind it, right? Every great exertion for pleasure has a lull of a little bit of downside to it that comes in behind it. And so we live in the dance of Shiva and Shakti, and our enlightenment lies within the shrine of the heart, the unchanging, the absolute silence, the peace that passes all understanding, or the peace that is before all understanding, before mind. That's where our realization sits, completely already compiled, waiting for us to move our identity from here to here. That's all. But this is the Divine Mother up here, right? She's in that world, and you need her permission. You need her permission to let you be pulled out of mind, to come to an understanding that you are not body mind, right? That it takes her grace. She has to give you the key for that. Pandit Shashadhar was weeping, and Vaishnav Charan, the musician, sang, "O tongue, always repeat the name of Mother Durga. Who but your Mother Durga will save you in distress? You are the heavens and the earth, and you are the netherworld. From three have the 12 Gopalas and Hari and Shiva sprung. The 10 embodiments of divine Shakti art thou, and thou the 10 avatars. This time, save me, you must. The moving and the unmoving, the gross and the subtle art thou. Creation and preservation art thou, and the last dissolution. You are the primal root of this manifold universe, the mother of the three worlds, their only savior. You are the Shakti of all, and thou thine own Shakti too." Right? So that last sentence there is a little singing to the fact that Shiva and Shakti in ultimate reality are one. They are not different. They can only by the acting of the senses can they be discerned into two separate things, moving and unmoving. Right? But in their nature, they are one. As the master listened to the last few lines, he went into an ecstatic mood, and the master himself sang, "O mother, for Yashoda, you would dance when she called you her precious blue jewel. Where have you hidden that lovely form, O terrible Shyama? Dance that way once for me, O mother. Throw down your sword and take the flute. Cast off your garland of heads and wear your wild flower garland. If without Shiva you cannot dance, then let Balarama be your Shiva. Dance, O Shyama, as you danced when you were Krishna. Play on your flute again, once so full of delight for the gopis." Now, see, this is beautiful here because Divine Mother, has become Shiva, or Mother has become Krishna. Mother has become all of these incarnations. Why? Because the divine absolute requires Shakti, requires the power of manifestation in order to enter into creation. And so that's why Ramakrishna placed himself beneath Holy Mother, and says, you can bother me, then you'll probably get away with it. But if you offend that one, pointing to Holy Mother, Shiva and himself, no one can help you with that. Right? In this land of manifestation, the Divine Mother is the queen, the king, the top of the heap. And it's she who becomes the avatar. It's she who becomes the devotees. It's she who becomes anything that is manifested, is strictly under the power of the Divine Mother. Right? But all of that folds into, at the end, kind of folds into the divine unchanging, into pure potential, which we call the Father, or we call Shiva, or the Divine Absolute, or what are all the other words? Anyway, but that divine unchanging, but that's where the unity is. That's where the oneness is. Ultimately, everything is one, and everything comes out and plays its part as it's energized by the ideas of me and mine. Dance, O Shyama, as you danced when you were Krishna. Mother, play on your flute again, once so full of delight for the gopis. Play again on your magic flute, which called the cattle in from the pasture, stopping the Jamuna's murmuring flow and turning it backward. Hot in the sky, the sun would burn when Yashoda, restless for her Krishna, fondly would call, "Here, my Gopala, cream and butter, eat them, my darling." And she would comb his long black hair and carefully braid it. Bending your supple body, mother, both at the neck and the waist and the knee, you danced with your friend Sridama, while two anklets played the music, tataya, tataya, tatataya, taya. Hearing their captivating sound, the gopis would rush there. Right, and really all of that's a description of all the different mythological events that happened if you read those stories. But all of those stories are metaphors for what exactly is going on in your life right now. This dance between Shiva and Shakti, this dance between the body, the mind, the self, in this manifest world, and all the struggling that goes on. You are the dance between Shiva and Shakti, right? It is you that is playing along. And all of these beautiful mother playing the flute, it's praying to God. Show me what is real. Bring me to the truth. Bring me to knowledge. Bring me to my wisdom. Take away this delusion of smallness and separateness, right? That is what all of those are referring to. Again, Pandit Shashadhar shed tears of love. Sri Ramakrishna came down to the consciousness of the world. Pointing to Shashadhar, he said to M, "Why don't you prod him?" He wanted M or some devotees to ask Shashadhar a question, right? Because Shashadhar is in quite a spiritual mood right now. He's got that connection happening, and Ramakrishna's like, "Oh, go poke the honeycomb there. Go see what truth you can learn from this pundit in tears of ecstasy." Ramdayal to Shashadhar, the scriptures speak of Brahman's form as a projection of mind. Who is it that projects? Shashadhar, it is Brahman itself that does so. It is no projection of a man's mind, right? Pratap, well, why does Brahman project the form? Master, you ask why? Brahman doesn't act in consultation with others. It is Brahman's pleasure. Brahman is self-willed. Why should we try to know the reason for Brahman's acting this way or that? You have come to the orchard to eat mangoes. Eat the mangoes. What is the good of calculating how many trees there are in the orchard, or how many thousands of branches, or how many millions of leaves? One cannot realize truth by futile arguments and reasoning, right? So there's several things he's saying there. One is God is not on a linear projection like we are, like we see ourselves. We see ourselves on a linear projection of past, present, and future, with time, space, and causation holding us. That's because that's how the mind interprets the unity, in form of a line where time breaks it up into disparate segments of change, and space breaks things into pieces, separations, right? Time, space, and causation gives reasons. This happens because of that. But ultimately, that is not part of the reality. That's a projection of the mind, a misunderstanding. Or not necessarily a misunderstanding. They're just the tools, the way that the mind breaks an unchanging unity into a story, basically. That's how the mind does it, is it takes that unity and places it within time, space, causation, gives it a past, a present, and a future. And so from our position, we have a why for everything, because we're not self-actuated, right? That's one thing that I shared this weekend in that lecture. Swami Vivekananda says we all work under compulsion, right? And the easiest way to say that is you're walking down the street, you smell pizza. That gives birth to the desire for pizza because you have a memory, an attachment to eating pizza. And now you're not happy until you eat that pizza. And so you go eat that pizza and you think that you made a choice to go have pizza and now you're happy. Your choice was never in there anywhere. You smelled the pizza, the old memory arose, the idea of desire for it here and now came into play. You created a future to come up with a plan of how to get it, and you went and ate it. All of that was scripted, and you just obeyed. You didn't make a decision in there, right? The decision, if you were going to make one, would be in the recognition that when you smelled that pizza, if you were not attached, if you had no attachments, and you smelled that pizza, that smell itself would have just made the day even that much more enjoyable. But it wouldn't have triggered any need. It wouldn't have triggered any desire. But because you have an attachment, that experience of pizza immediately causes a desire to form, which then throws you into planning mode, stretching you into a future in which to spread out your blanket of bondage so that you come up with a time period in which to act, because you think you're the one acting, but you're not. The body smelled the pizza, the mind gave it meaning, the body became hungry. And then the mind and body conspired on how to get that piece of pizza, and you were just along for the ride the whole time, thinking that you were doing it all. But you are not the doer, right? So this is why he's talking about that. Brahman does not act in consultation with others. He
But
is not led by conditions and circumstance. What's that?
I had a question.
Yes.
They say that time is illusion.
Yes.
And is it because the life is dream is a dream? Is that why, or is there like more comprehensible reason behind that?
Well, time belongs to mind. And you know that because if you silence the mind, time ceases to pass for you. This is one of the first fun things that Mother betrays to you when you quiet the mind. She shows you your eternity. Shows you, you learn that eternity is not a long time. It's outside of time, and you get a direct experience of it when you have that silent mind. If you're having a great meditation, which means the mind is very quiet, it's not jumping from one thing to the next, a 2-hour meditation seems like 10 minutes, right? It's like, whoa, wow, it's amazing, because you were outside of time. You were more on your true side of the self than on the body mind side of the self. But if you go into that same meditation and the mind is very active, time is registered by us, at least as far as I can see in practice, that time is really just the frequency of thinking. That, the more thoughts, the busier the mind is, the slower time is passing for you. The less the mind is disturbed, the faster time seems to pass. And that faster and slower are just having to do with experience of the body mind, right? But when you manage to actually separate and become established in self for a moment, you find that that's why time seems to not pass. It actually disappears. In your true nature, there is no time. So
thank you.
Yeah. So that's true of time, space, and causation. Those three projections are tools of mind. And when mind is silenced in realization, those three things disappear. We realize there is no time, space, or causation. Those are elements of egoism. They are tools that egoism uses to maintain its delusion of existence in there. And then, then you to understand that Brahman not only is projecting, but he is also the projection. He is everything. And the easiest way to see this is by just contemplating your dream. Again, in your dream, you can look around your room right now, and because you're having the same experience as you are in a dream, because you're still looking at only something your mind has projected, right? Because your mind, none of your senses have actually had a direct experience of any of what you're seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, or smelling right now. They've given that information to the brain, and the brain has created symbols to represent all of the information that it's getting from the senses at this moment. So even what you're looking at right now is not the thing itself. It's your mind's symbol for that thing. And so what does the mind use to become a wall, to become a light, to become a bed, to become a blanket, to become a cup, to become your shirt, right? What is the mind in dream state? What is it using to become all of those things? What is it about the mind that can become everything? And that is what we mean by Brahman. Brahman is what the mind, well, I'm going to say an illegal thing. Brahman is what the mind uses to become everything. It is the dream substance. It is the mind substance. It is that which can take any form and do anything. It is the air between you and the wall in front of you. It is the wall itself. It is you. It is you. It is you seeming to breathe. It's all of that. It's everything and more. And so we have a direct experience of Brahman. We often like to put Brahman in this, we always put him over there as some mystery thing that we'll never really know or have any experience of. But in fact, all experience you've ever had has been of Brahman alone. There is no other experience to have but of Brahman. So you're sitting on Brahman right now. My coffee cup, tragically empty, is empty of Brahman. So, this is an interesting way of thinking. One, because it makes God tangible. It makes these truths tangible to us, which is very helpful to me, and I assume helpful to everyone else. But it also gives you a way of communicating. You can't hug God, it seems, right? But you can. Pick up anything in your room right now and hug it, and you are hugging nothing but the divine. And so I like to use that. I use that. In the mornings, like I've shared many times, I sit on the edge of my bed and I put my hands on the covers and I remind myself, I am waking to Mother's dream. I am now inhabiting Mother's dream and I'm walking through Mother's mind. And Mother's mind, Brahman has created all of this for my sustenance, for my creation, sustenance, and destruction, right? So, and I can then I always rub in a very naive way, of course, rub my blankets and say, good morning, Brahman, right? Knowing that that's an absurdity because Brahman's saying good morning to Brahman, using Brahman in Brahman. But nonetheless, for me, a deluded human being, I get some satisfaction that I can touch God, that I can express a kindness to God. And also, it's wonderful for all kinds of forms of devotion. The imagination plays a big part in bhakti, and that's not a slight on bhakti. It's the power of bhakti, because everything in this world that has manifested begins as imagination. Every city, every skyscraper. Somebody sat there and looked at that beautiful empty piece of ground and said, what we need here is a 45-story building. So they started drawing it and thinking about it and imagining it and putting it all together. And eventually they had success and they put up a 45-story building right there in that beautiful garden. And so this is how imagination works. What begins in imagination ends manifested in the world. Not everything, but can, if you put action behind your imagination. And so when you sit there and you sit on that bed and you pick up your pillow and give Mother a big hug, yes, at first that's imagination, but it will come through, at some point and become real for you. You'll get that hug. And so to become aware of God in all things is what brings us to the right order of thinking, where we have a respect for all things. We have a natural compassion for all things, because we see that it is ourself that Brahman has become, and that this manifestation of Brahman is equal with every other manifestation of Brahman, and it's all in the nature of love, wisdom, and being. And so this is how we turn into what we naturally are before delusion took us down, before wrong thinking as body mind brought us down. We were loving beings who understood our oneness with each other and understood there was no separation in there. And then he at the end of this, he's encouraging you, knowing this, knowing all of this, why are you here? He says, don't get tripped out by this world of constant change. Don't think that the answers lie in the changing, right? Don't go to philosophy. Don't go to dogma. Don't go to creeds. Don't think that it's the particulars of religion that are going to bring you to your realization, to your fulfillment. So don't count leaves. That's what he means by that. Eat mangoes. What does that mean? Well, the nature of the universe is Satchitananda. So start looking for and enjoying that manifesting love. Start expressing that manifestation of expressing love within yourself. Sit in silence and act in wisdom within, because that is the nature of what you are. if you do anything in accordance with pure love, pure wisdom through pure being, your life is going to be fulfilling and beautiful. Anything that you do that violates any of those three things, when you do something not wise, when you do something not loving, when you do something that distracts you, takes you out of being, then you're going to suffer. You're going to have some pain in your life. And so by knowing these simple truths about yourself, place your faith in them and begin to have your actions come from that place rather than up here, which is usually a calculation about how to get something from the sense world into yourself to make you happy. That is impossible, right? You cannot bring anything out of the dream into yourself. That's why you can eat all night in your dreams and still wake up ready for breakfast. Because the dream world, these things composed of Brahman in this dream state of ours, are already ourself. They cannot be added to ourself. So we cannot find satisfaction in them. We can only find distraction in them. Real healing, real growth, real transcendence always happens in the silence of the heart, right? In that space before mind. All right, so that's why he's saying one cannot realize truth by futile arguments and reasoning. Pratap, shouldn't we reason any more then? Master, I'm asking you not to indulge in futile reasoning, but reason by all means about the real and the unreal, about what is permanent and what is transitory. You must reason when you are overcome by lust, by anger, or by grief, right? You reason whenever you're being pulled outside of your knowledge of being, Satchitananda. When you're starting to be pulled into the world of the changing, like lust, it's like you need the world of change and the world of constant change in order to fulfill that set of desires. But that's the trick. Look around. You can never fulfill that desire. That desire, they say, fulfilling that desire is like trying to put a fire out with gasoline, right? It doesn't work. The more you give it, the more it takes from you, and there's no end to it. And that's all forms of sensual enjoyment, whatever that sense is. Drinking, drugs, partying, all those things. There is no fulfillment. There's momentary distraction and endless effort necessary, because you will have to repeat those things over and 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 over, right? And if you never wake up, that's what your life becomes. If you don't hit the wall at some point and say, what in the world is going on here? I give so much of my time just to getting drunk. All the money that I've poured into that effort, all the time that I've invested in that effort, all the years I've invested in that effort. And what do I have to show for it? But bad skin and, red eyes. It's like, what did it give me? And that's when reasoning steps in. You start looking at it. You start thinking, wow, I've been doing this over and over again for 60 years. And I have never been glad that I did it when all was said and done. And yet I keep doing it. What is going on here? And that's why they call it awakening. You start realizing that you've been a puppet to your senses, that you've been running after suggestions given to you by mind or by the senses to chase things that aren't for you. They're for the body-mind. And the body-mind itself is constantly changing its requirements and its demands. So you will never please the body. You will never please the mind. The best that you can do is resign to spirit, yourself, where no desire arises, where no discontent exists, right? So go ahead and reason about what is real and what is unreal, because Ramakrishna says there is only one thing that is true, and that is that which does not change, right? So the only thing that's actually real is that which is unchanging. And so you need to start observing the world, observing mind, observing body, to identify that which is not changing. And if you're like me, you're going to come up empty-handed. You're going to run to your teacher like I did to Swami Prabhupada. And I said, Maharaj, I spent 3 hours in the shrine this morning trying to find something that didn't change. There isn't anything that doesn't change. Why does Ramakrishna say that the only thing real is that which doesn't change? And Swami Prabhupada was quiet for a minute, as he always would pick up his napkin, wipe his mouth, because he would never speak holy words unless he had cleaned his lips and mouth, which I always felt amazingly sacred about him. But he cleaned, wiped his mouth, and he would sit there and he looked at me and he just asked me a simple question. He said, did you consider that which was looking for the unchanging? And boy, did fireworks go off in my head at that moment. I was like, oh my God. Oh my, are you kidding me? That was, oh my, how could I not? What? It was so obvious. It was so, I literally sat there in the shrine for 3 hours and didn't come up with that realization, that seeing. Right. And so that's why we have gurus to point, so that what? So that that which is obvious can become apparent to us. And that's all we're trying to do in spiritual life. We're not trying to see truth of stuff that's been proposed that we've made up. We're trying to look at what is with an eye that's free of ego, so that we don't hear it through the story of egoism, but we see it as it is. And when we see things as it is, ecstasy is the natural response. That's what happens to Thakur every time he goes into samadhi. He's seeing things as they are. He's seeing the beloved everywhere. He's seeing Brahman as Brahman. He's not being fooled into seeing it as objects. And the only response is ecstasy, which is unity, right? So he says, you must reason when you are overcome by lust, anger, and grief, right? Because it's only that type of reasoning that will show you that those things are not what you want, that those things have never delivered on what they promised. They've always left you empty and more hungry than before you began. And Shashadhar says, that is different. It is called reasoning based on discrimination, reasoning based on discernment. What is real? Master, yes, discernment between the real and the unreal. All sat in silence. Again, the master spoke, addressing the pundit. Master, formerly many great men used to come here. Shashadhar, you mean rich people? Master, no, I mean great scholars. In the meantime, here comes this Regina. Right. In the meantime, the small car of Jagannath had been brought to the veranda, right? So it's apparently the time to put Jagannath in his little cart and wheel him around outside the household deity. Inside the car were the images of Krishna, Balarama, and Subhadra. They were adorned with flowers, garlands, jewelry, and yellow apparel. Balaram was a sattvic worshipper. There was no outward grandeur to his worship. Outsiders did not even know of his car festival at his house. The master and the devotees went to the veranda, and Sri Ramakrishna pulled the car by the rope. Then he began to sing. I would have loved to see this. I've seen that little car, and it's about the size of a kid's wagon.
Yes.
You know, with a little house built on it for them to ride in. Just beautiful. Little wooden wheels on it, little round wooden wheels. And it's just sitting there on the veranda that he's talking about. You can see it to this day. You can go to Balaram's house and see this little car sitting there on the veranda. And I can just, I can't imagine how sweet that must have looked with Ramakrishna pulling that in half in ecstasy, pulling that cart, wheeling it around with all the little deities sitting in there, getting their ride outside of the shrine every year. Mm-hmm. And Ramakrishna going and then singing, you know, see how all Nadia is shaking under the waves of Gauranga's love, right? So you can only imagine he's feeling that love from God as represented by the images on the shrine, just this love wafting off of this little cart that he's pulling around, which he can hardly control himself, you know, trying to stay in the body-mind state so he can be present for worship and with the devotees. He sings again, behold, the two brothers have come who weep while chanting Hari's name. The brothers who, in return for blows, offer to sinners Hari's love, right? So this love that comes freely, even to those who are giving blows, you know, who are
Swami,
Yes.
question. What brothers are we talking about right now?
Oh, Nitya and Nata, I think. These are two, I don't know. I don't know the whole story of
Okay.
them.
And where did you say you saw that cart go to whose house?
At
How
Balaram's
much?
house?
120.
120. Sorry.
What's that?
Oh, they know about
Balaram.
the brothers. They're going to
Oh,
tell.
yes. Does somebody know the story of the two brothers? If you want to share it, it'd be wonderful. For me, I don't.
Gaur Nitai.
What is it? Gaur
The
and
Gaur and Nitai. Nimai.
okay.
Yeah.
Do you know who were they?
Oh, it's a long story, Mother.
All right.
I mean, they were the ones who started, the Vrindavan, the dance,
So it's from the story of Krishna.
yes, Krishna's. Yeah.
So you
I
would
mean,
find
he-
it in we would find it in the
Nitai,
Bhagavatam.
Nimai, he's the one who thought of himself as Radha and worshipped Krishna.
Okay. All right.
So actually, thank you, Reena Didi. I think in the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right, has got something to do. He came basically, as Radha, because Lord Krishna wanted to feel that he missed out on how Radha loved him so much that he wanted to experience it himself. So he incarnated as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Is that right, Reena Didi?
Yes.
All right.
He and his brother.
Yes, you can also, I mean, you can often, the important thing here is mentioned here, behold, two brothers have come who weep while chanting Hari's name. So the important thing about the brothers isn't so much the stories and the actual places behind them, but the fact that they're being represented as the height of devotion right here. Two brothers who in return for blows, even when they've been abused, offer to sinners just Hari's love, right? So that just they're illuminated souls. They're no longer trapped in their body mind ideal, and so they're spreading that love. And anytime they hear the divine name mentioned, immediately that surge, the tears of that bliss begin flowing. And incidentally, I was told, and it turns out to be true, that tears of bliss or devotion come from the outside of the eyes. And the other tears of stress or sorrow come from the inside of the eyes. And so you'll find that as you go on in spiritual life, sometimes you'll be moved to tears by a meditation or something, and you'll always feel them coming out the outside corners of your eyes. A useless piece of knowledge there that was pointed out to me by a Swami at one point. Sri Ramakrishna danced with the devotees. This is something we don't do enough. This dancing. But dancing is one of the hardest things to do without ego. If you can manage to dance in pure devotion or in pure response to the joy in yourself, I've seen that dancing in India, and it's unlike anything that you'll experience, with dancing, where there's just dancing normally has so much ego involved in it. Am I a good dancer? Am I a beautiful dancer? Am I moving in the right way? And all that stuff, it's always so ego driven.
Gaur Nitai, they are the ones who you had started the dancing, Hari's name, with the dances.
I see.
Kirtan.
Ah, all right.
Yes, so ISKCON has it regularly, the Krishna temple.
Right. Yeah, I've seen at Bellarmont, it happens on occasion, not very often. The only times I've seen it was at our when we took sannyas. There was dancing almost every afternoon after we got back from begging for our food. When we were waiting for the other brothers to get back from their begging, the instruments would be out and there'd be some devotional singing and there'd be dancing in a circle around the instruments. It was quite lovely. And then the day that we all got our names from the president, when we got all of our sannyas names, we danced in the president's office for an hour or so that day. And I've seen it once before at a temple dedication when they were circumambulating the new temple that was being consecrated, and There was some singing, devotional singing, and some drum playing going on, and some of the swamis were beginning to dance in the procession. But it's a beautiful thing. It's a spiritual dancing. It's not like what you do at the disco, obviously. It's just so free from egoism and so free from, you're not performing and showing, you're expressing something very pure inside. And you can so see the difference, between somebody who's dancing to be seen and somebody who's dancing to be free. Two very, very different experiences. Even if they're doing the same moves, those moves are very different. They hit very differently. So Sri Ramakrishna danced with the devotees. The musician and his party joined the master in the music and dancing. Soon the whole veranda was filled with people. The ladies witnessed this scene of joy from an adjoining room. It appeared as if Chaitanya himself were dancing with his devotees, intoxicated with divine love. Right? What would you say? Intoxicated with divine love means the absence of any egoistic perspectives. The feeling of unity, the feeling of oneness, the feeling of security, the feeling of just all those qualities of love just rolling through you as you just move in unison with that divine joy, with that divine song that you're hearing inside, that reverberation with the soul, which doesn't happen so very often because of our delusion. But when you draw close to yourself, when you have an idea of what you really are, to feel that reverberation, to feel that strength, that absolute security of being there, it really lays waste anything that the ego ever offered you through all of its requirements. All right, my goodness, it's 5:34. So we should stop there, stop the recording.